Buenos días. Feliz cumpleaños al Virgen de Guadalupe. On December 12th, every year, people of Latin America, indigenous people from Latin America, all over the world in the United States, celebrate this day. Because this is on the day that the Virgen de Guadalupe, Tonantinatzin Guadalupe, made herself known to the Catholic world in an image, in a way that the Catholics would accept it, but always being honorable and faithful to the indigenous people who worshiped her. When times are hard, as heard it before, a story is good. And we are on hard times. And I have a good story for you. My story this morning is about Mother Earth and Father Sky and all that lies between us. And all that lies between us began 6,000, 10,000, 11,000 years ago here in a place we call America and all over the world. But here is where indigenous people came from. Not from China, not from Siberia, here. Our stories tell us this is where we were created. And among those creations, Mother Earth kept coming forth and letting us know, all our ancestors, her presence in one physical form or another. It had many names for her. Many empires were built with her in mind as they worshipped her. The Olmec, 6,000 years ago, established civilization. Following the Olmec, these people that gathered around from Mesoamerica and built a city unknown anywhere else in the world, Teotihuacan. Teotihuacan had 6 pyramids that still exist today. And all those pyramids were aligned with the cosmos, each one aligned with the solar and lunar solstice, each one having some meaning to measure time, each one a monument, and also set there to honor the spirit. It was their way of trying to reach the mountain, the top of the mountain. So they built the mountain, pyramids. Following Teotihuacan, the Mayans came in and settled, and they gave us numerous things, invented the number 0, established the first hierarchical form of government here in the Americas, created their own language and writing, and carried on their teachings. When the Mayans left, the Toltecs came for a short period of time, and then out of the north, from a place called Aztlan, I believe is a place we call southern Arizona and southern New Mexico. No, honestly, because people still haven't figured out where the Aztec came from. But they did come from, and they followed a prophecy. If they came south to Central America, they would find a home on a place where there was an eagle on a cactus with a snake in its beak. And that would be the place to establish a civilization. The Aztec did build a civilization. They built an empire that went from the borders of what we call southern United States all the way to southern coast of Costa Rica, all the way east to the Atlantic Ocean, all the west to the Pacific. None ruled like the Aztec. And among the Aztec, none was worshipped, no other god or goddess, as Tonantinatzin, I misspelled it, Tonantinatzin Tlecolipipa. That's Quatl. What it means is Earth Mother, honorable Earth Mother, Tonantinatzin Tlecolipipa. She who flies out of the source of light like an eagle on fire. And from all over the country, people will pilgrimage to Tepeyac, a small hill covered with rocks and cactus, sagebrush. It looked like southern Arizona. And then the Spanish came and put an end to the Spanish Empire. And in putting an end to the Spanish Empire, they also had a mandate coming from further east in Spain. Destroy everything possible that is indigenous, because they are savages, less than us. And they did. They couldn't tear down all the pyramids with their solid rock. But anything else, codicils, they destroyed. And they left the people with nada. And then, in the process of destroying, they turned them in to try to make farmers of them, servants of the Spanish. Miners, digging Spanish minerals. And at the same time, our earth mothers started to give birth to Spaniards. And out of that, a new race. Mestizos, mixed bloods. Mestizos, that look like me. Indigenous and Spaniard. Dark-colored skin, finer features. Indígenas. But Tonantinatzin didn't leave us alone. She stayed there, present. People kept looking for her. So, the Catholics had to find some way to convert them. One morning, 1531, December 9th, Juan Diego, a 50-year-old indigenous man, he was indigenous, he was born before the Spanish came, on his way to church to get what we called catechism back in the day, and to get his catechism. And it was bright early in the morning, early dawn, and he's walking, and he had to walk past Tepeyac. And as he's walking past Tepeyac, his thought came to us, oh, home of Our Lady. And he's walking, and he hears the sound, Juan Diego, mijo, come to me, mijo. And Juan Diego came, and he was in awe. Is this still, is this Tonantinatzin, Guadalupe? And he dropped to his knees and says, Juan Diego, go to the bishop. You go to the bishop and tell him, I want the shrine here. And nope. Juan Diego made the trip to the bishop. The bishop received him. The bishop says, no, come again sometime. And so Juan Diego goes back, goes up to the beer hen, says, bishop said no. It says, go again. So the next day, Juan Diego went down again to go see the bishop, and the bishop saw him, and he said, no. He says, next time you come, and come again, bring me proof. Bring me proof of what you saw. Bring me proof that there is a Holy Lady there. Bring me proof. Juan Diego, he went back and goes up, he says to the leader, probably thought, I'm sorry, I did all I could. And the leader says, está bien, mijo, it's okay. Come tomorrow. Come tomorrow in the morning, and I will give you all the proof you need. And Juan Diego was became a little bit more relieved. So he went home. But early in the morning, still dark, heard growling and moaning, sounds of a dying man. Juan Diego lived with his uncle. And he got up and he went and saw that his uncle was sick on his deathbed. His uncle said, go and get the priest. In those days, and still, he'd go and get the priest so they can give you the last rites. So Juan Diego got up, got dressed, and he's thinking, but I'm supposed to go see the Virgin this morning. No, He's my uncle. I better go and get the priest. And so he comes close, and he's getting right close to the hill, Tepeyac, and he wants to go around it. Kind of go around, so he doesn't get seen. And she appears as Juan Diego. Am I not your mother? Am I not here? And Juan Diego says, yes, but my uncle. And she said, your uncle is all right. He is healing even as we speak. And he felt relieved. He believed. He trusted what she said. And he said, okay, it says, Juan Diego, climb to the top of Tepeyac. And there you will find a garden. And I want you to pick the flowers from this garden, put them on, forget the word, I'm going to use cloak. And I asked the spirits, I forget words, and I says, please don't let me forget the words today. Sidetrack, anyway, back. And please don't let me forget. And as he's climbing up, his first word, he says, but this hill only has cactus shrubs. And, oh well. And as he started climbing higher, he started seeing greenery. And then as he crested over to the top of that, it's beautiful, beautiful garden. All kinds of flowers. Flowers blooming December. And it does get cold in December in Mexico. December, and Castilian roses. And so he was thinking, is this the world? Is this the land that my ancestors talk about, the Olmecs, the Toltecs? Is this the place that we were looking for, a place that led to heaven? And he says, they could remember, they got to get on with gathering. So he gathered all these flowers, and he went down the hill, a little more bounce on his foot, because now he had something to show the bishop. And took him down, showed the Virgin. She places them in order. You know how people put, especially women, they like to put flowers in. As he put them, he says, okay, put them, and says, take them to the bishop. Juan Diego went, and it was still early in the mid-morning. When he got to the bishop's place, he said, I come to see the bishop. I have proof. And the servants came back, and they said, the bishop said to wait. And he waited, and he waited, and he waited, and he waited. And here it was, getting close to what we would say like about 3:30, we start seeing that it's going to be getting dark soon, and he's there waiting still. And the head servant comes over and looks, and he says, he saw the flowers. He tells the bishop, he really does have something to show you. So the bishop calls him in. Juan Diego goes up, a little bounce on his step because he's got something to show the bishop. And Juan Diego goes up, and he drops the flowers. And the bishop sees these flowers. And as he looks at the flowers, he looks up, and there on the cloak was an image imprinted in that, wasn't cloth. At that time, they used yucca as material to form things. The Virgin de Guadalupe, as you saw. And immediately what came to her mind is the Holy Mother, Virgin Mary. But then as he looked, he said, no. Her colors are teal, green and blue. And her veil's covered with stars. He knew it wasn't the Virgin Mary. And the other thing, too, is her skin is brown, like an indigenous person, but her features are Spanish. And he thought, a miracle. He waited for a while, put his hands out. Juan Diego gave it to him, and he invited Juan Diego further into the house, to a little sanctuary into his house. And he set it there, invited Juan Diego to stay for dinner and to have a sleepover. Early the next morning, they got up, had breakfast, and Bishop said, well, let's go to Tepeyac. And they went to Tepeyac, and Juan Diego is showing him proudly, because the bishops came, and he's showing him, this is where I saw her, this is what we said. And then he said, where did she tell you? Where was she standing when she told you that your uncle was okay? And I went over and told her, he says, okay, and where did you get these flowers? And took them up the hill, and, well, the bishop didn't see a beautiful garden. But, it didn't matter. The proof was in the pudding. He had it already down there in the sanctuary. And he said, well, let's go see your uncle. So they went to where the uncle was living, and he wanted to talk to the uncle. And the uncle said, yes, she was here. She was here yesterday in the morning, and she said prayers over me, and I got better. And she says she wants to be called Guadalupe. But the bishop heard Guadalupe, not the tle. Spanish don't say tle. All he heard was Guadalupe. And immediately, his mind goes back to his memory. His memory says, boom, there is a virgin in Guadalupe, Spain. And that's where the association was made. So he said, yes, Guadalupe. And so they said, the chapel will be built. In a short time, the chapel was going to be built. And when it was finished, the bishop and the congregation were moving the Virgin, as she said, to put her up into this chapel. And on the way, some of the warriors were showing off their martial arts skills, and one of them stabbed the other accidentally and was really bleeding profusely. And they said they started praying to the Virgin, and the wound closed and healed, and he was better. And the bishop said, the third miracle. At that time, 3 miracles, and you become a saint. So Guadalupe is elevated to sainthood now. They built the chapel. It wasn't until the early 1700s, that they built a small basilica, and they moved the Virgin to the small basilica. And then in 1976, they built the larger basilica where she sits today. Now, in that period of time, from the time that the Virgin had appeared, the word got out by word of mouth of the Virgin. So the bishop, or none of the other priests came out and printed anything. No printing of the story, nada. It wasn't until 1609 that they first sent someone. It was a mestizo who spoke Guadal, and he also spoke Spanish, who wrote the story. The story was being told by the Catholic bishops and the priest. It was not being told by the indigenous people. Fortunately, in the 20 years from 1531 to 1550, 1560, 12 million indigenous people converted to become Catholics. And one priest knew what the catalyst was, what it was that was drawing them all to. He says, this is the way they can be who they are and worship in a way they will not lose their heads. They go to the chapel, the Catholic chapel, and they pay homage to the Virgen de Guadalupe. This same priest also had the ingenious idea, and he talked to the bishop, let me take some men who speak Guadal and also speak Spanish. And I want to go out and I want to get as many stories as I can before we lose a generation who knows stories of the ancestors back. And he did, and they gathered stories and in Guadal, and then these men translated it into Spanish. He gathered 2,500 pages and put them into 12 volumes. And out of those 12 volumes, he selected some and put together, it's called a Codex Florentine. Codex is something like those big fat dictionaries you've seen. Well, back then it was great big books and with heavy parchment. And Florentine, flor means like flower, in reference to the flower world, the world we call heaven that was talked about from the time of the Olmecs. the world that Juan Diego thought he was seeing when he climbed to pick the flowers. And it was captured from the oral tradition and printed by this priest. It never got published and sent to the people. The church kept it. And in 1996, sometime 1970s, it appeared and someone found it in New York, a New York museum. And once they started looking to them, especially anthropologists and those who also knew the Nahuatl, they discovered that the first story in there was the story of the first songs told. And who's in the story of the first songs told? Tonantinatzin. What? Tonantinatzin. The name indigenous people knew, the Virgin Guadalupe. So they survived, and now they're just now starting to mine the information out of that. It still hasn't made it public. You can find all of this, credit to most of these in Wikipedia. There's a vast amount of information in that, and there's a vast number of references Wikipedia goes to give you that information. Guadalupe grew beyond the boundaries of Mesoamerica. And the faithful not only indigenous mestizo people, but also people of other colored, other races. And looking to a mother, an earth mother, a mother who promised to love, show compassion, and protect. She became so popular, so well known, that among Catholic sacred places, the number one sacred place that Catholics go to, mostly indigenous people, is the Basilica of Guadalupe. It is also the number 3 sacred places of all sacred places in the world where people pilgrimage to. The Bishop, Pope John, called her the Princess of Mexico, the Patroness of the Americas. And that's how well she's known today. Lutherans, Protestant churches who don't really honor idols in their churches, now have made a place for the Virgen de Guadalupe. Lutherans, Anglican Church, and other Protestants. Why? Because the indigenous people who come here, settle in Mexico, still have a faith and belief in that Virgin. I tell you the story today because when times are hard, I believe we all need a story. I tell you this story not because I want you to seek out and become a follower of the Virgin Guadalupe. I tell you this story because I want you to know where there is faith, where there is trust, and where there is love, you will find a story in your history. And if you go back, you will find a story in your grandparents' and great-grandparents' history, and a story that carries a line in it to present day of all that has been sacred and of value to you and to your family, and to the society and the community where you live. And I tell you this story because I want to encourage you. I want you to go out and seek and find that story. And as you're looking at it, there's a world of mystery and wonder. When I first committed to talk, the first time, the second time, third, once I commit, the spirits tell me what I'm talking about. And once I commit to that, to accept that, information comes from everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. It seems to me like before the phone was on, the AI was already popping things up to me that related to Mesoamerica and the spirituality of America. And I believe that once a person starts to do that, the spirits will help you and guide you to find that story. So that's why I tell you that story. And now for a personal story. My father came to this country back in 1944 or 1943. And he came from Tampico. And also he's indigenous, Aztec, and Hispanic. He made promise to the Virgin when he came to this country, if he was successful in getting his papers, getting across, finding a job, meeting a woman that he loved and cared for, and raising a family, that he would take his firstborn to the Basilica. Indigenous people make those kinds of promises. When they seek help and help is given, they make promises to do something in return. Well, when my dad started reaching an age, and his oldest child was a grown-up, he started to realize that he might not be able to fulfill that promise. And my mom later told us after they died that he had sometime spoken to her about her and asked her to take on the promise. And my mom, she took on the promise. I don't think so much as she was influenced by him, as much as her devotion to the Virgin de Guadalupe. And she told us, and I heard it, but I didn't act on it. And she wasn't going to extract a promise from me. That was my dad's promise, and that was hers. Sometime later, I met this very interesting woman, and I told her the story. And 15 years ago, Anne does not forget stories. Anne says, we're going to be going to Costa Rica. And she says, yeah, we have talked about it. We made a trip. And we have a layover. We have a layover in Mexico City. Wow. And, wow, yeah. No, I didn't say wow. I said, oh, okay, we have a layover. And she says, and maybe we can go to the Basilica. There was no well there either. I says, oh, must we? She says, well, we'll be so close. Well, okay. We arrived in Mexico City when we were on our return back. And we checked in the hotel, and we got out and walked out the street, looked down there, and there's where we can get on the light rail, but it's underground. I says, let's go. Maybe we can go to the Basilica. Wow. We went and got down there, sit down, and what's the big sign there? Basilica, Virgen de Guadalupe, with an arrow, right? Wow. And we're sitting there, and this woman in her 20s, she and another woman the same age, and she's holding a toddler, and not a baby, but not quite walking around, and two primary elementary school age children, probably maybe in kindergarten and second grade. And they came down and sat, and well, I usually start playing with the kids and talking to them. And she let us know that she asked where we were going. And we said, well, we're planning to go see the Virgin de Guadalupe Basilica, but we don't know what we're going to do once we get off the train. And this woman looked at us, she looked at me, and at the time I thought it was an invitation, because she says, come with us. Now when I think about it, it wasn't so much an invitation, come with us, as it was Juan Diego, go to the bishop. And so we talked, and as we talked, she told us that she came from the same village as Juan Diego, and she grew up there. And, we got to the destination, train stopped, opened up, and there you just have to walk up like a tunnel. And once we got to the street, and I looked out. I kid you not. The sidewalks and the streets, wide streets, packed with people, all headed for the basilica. I mean, packed. And she looked at us, and she looked at me, and she says, "Follow me. Don't get behind or you'll get lost." And she started to walk, and she started to walk briskly. Not cautiously, not moving. She started to walk with purpose. And as she started to walk, I think I was watching Ben-Hur part the Red Sea. Because as she's walking, the people just opened up. They just moved. And it just moved, and then they came back together as we walked. We walked about a mile this way, and they were all converging to this place, to the basilica, and then you go up the stairs, and then it narrows down even more the entrance. More people there, no problems. It just opened up. She walked into the basilica, and we followed her, right down the aisle, down to the first row and the first pew, and she shows us 2 seats. She looked at us, she gave us a blessing, wished us a happy trip. We said thank you. And she left and turned around to see where we were sitting, turned around, she was gone. Now, here I am, we get here, and what do we see? A conveyor belt. I call it a conveyor belt. It's one of those fucking things that they have at the airport. And so people get onto that, and it goes up and around and in front of the altar. And as it comes around the corner, right over there is the Virgin Mary. She's behind glass, but then she has a rail to separate you from there. And when people go, you ride this thing on there, and as you're riding it, you're going past, and then you're going past, and then before you know it, it's gone. And so it doesn't stop. People lay down the flowers. So as we went past, I looked and I watched her, and then I saw the priest and people doing something on the altar. Finally, we got to the other end and we left. As we exited, we saw a door open, and out of the building, these men were coming out carrying bundles and bundles of roses. And they had these boxes of all these little artifacts of gold and silver that people left. You know, promises made for a healing arm, promises left for a broken leg. Putting them in the car and said, "Well, where are you taking these?" Back to the shops to be sold again. There was a place where you can light candles. And I don't remember if we lit a candle or not. I do remember looking up trail up higher where the original chapel was, up the hill. And we went up to the hill. And it was a little chapel. It was very small. And it had photographs and people there and portraits. And we spent some time there. And then we came down. I don't remember if we went to the first basilica or not. I do remember as we're coming down the hill, looking down the hill, and seeing these thousands and thousands of people that we had to get past to get back to the light rail. But in my memory, we came down, and I felt the sense that we were lost, but I also felt the sense that we were being guided. So as we're going around and we're looking at the things, you know, just like you're on the right trail, and they're going. And we were there for a while, got through all these people, and we ended back up at the light rail, and flew home the next day. And later on, I told my mom about the story. But that's my personal story, and it was something that we did, and it was something that I did, and I'm very thankful to Anne for having gotten us there. But what stays in my mind the most is impression is that we're walking and this little woman, look at me, and all those people moved and all came back. If she had not been there, if she had not come to greet us, if she had not directed us, who knows, we would have gotten through, but we may not have gotten through the front. And it was a miracle. And even now, as I think back, it becomes even more meaningful now, as having heard the words, we have a layover. Why not go to, and if it hadn't been for Ann, we may not have got there, because that was not the direction I was going. And I feel quite differently now. And one last story. This summer, I wanted to go see my brother. I like to see my brother and my sister. And I like to drive. But I told Dan, I says, I'm afraid to get on the road and drive. I'm afraid I'll get pulled over for the slightest reason, no reason at all. And they're going to take me, throw me in a van, and take me down to the ICE jail. And there's where I'll be. And she says, well, why don't you fly? I says, that's about how much, that's why it's fine. I says, I'll think about it. And I called my brother and I told him that I wanted to come to see him. I wanted to drive, but I was fearful. And he says, well, I'm very cautious about going out too. And I live here in Arlington, Texas, between Fort Worth and Dallas. And I said, but I'm thinking I'm taking the plane. Would you come and pick me up? And he says, certainly. So we made arrangements. We flew there, I flew back. It was a safe trip. But what helped me get over it, and I was thinking about the 2 trips, was learning to manage my fear. Dan was telling me it's fear, and yes, you have that. And then I also had to manage my fear, remember my stories. Remember my stories. It's not just the story of Guadalupe. It's the story of White Calf Buffalo Woman and the influence that she had on my life. And it's a story of how indigenous people have overcome many, many, many different things. And I also thought how, as American people, we have also at times of hardship, in spite of our difference, come together. And so I thank you for being here. I was very excited, somewhat nervous about speaking today, but it went a lot easier than I thought. And I'm greatly appreciative of you. And my favorite thing about coming to this church is you. It's you. It's just coming to you, talking to you, and the music. Thank you. Mitaku yesu.